Nicky Rankar here, and I can remember when I first found out about lifting and started doing it. And it's interesting because I didn't really care much about it. And I think that a lot of people, when they start lifting, especially weightlifting, and the snatch in particular, you see it, you don't know if you can do it, maybe you try it, and then all of a sudden you start to care. And for me, I lifted from when I was 15 to 25 and just went through the movement. Just went through the motions. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I thought it looked cool, it felt cool, and I watched other people do it, and eventually realized that there was a lot more to it than just throwing a bar over my head. And I wanted to become a lifter. And that was something that I didn't know how to do. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have somebody to help me. I didn't have anybody to teach me how to do everything. And when I did, it seemed like they really didn't know what they were talking about. They would coach me and talk to me in ways that didn't really make sense because I acted like I was advanced. I acted like I knew what was going on because I didn't know. You ever hear somebody say that? You don't know what you don't know? Well, I didn't know very much. And what I started to realize was I want to become a lifter. And when I started diving into what lifting was, it was a world that I had no idea about. And not only that, but where I lived, there was nobody that was in that world deep enough to be able to help. So I asked myself, what do I have to do to become a lifter? And what I realized was I had to start understanding what it was to lift. And I started to teach myself. And what ended up happening is at 25 to 29, I worked my butt off. I tried everything I possibly could. I asked people questions that when they would tell me something, I would try to decipher what that actually meant. And I realized that I didn't understand the vocabulary of a lifter. So I started to talk to myself in a very simple way, in a way that made sense to me, in a way that allowed me to get into positions that other people I would see online, I would see on the internet, I would see through social media, I would see in person. When it looked good, I would try to mimic it. And when it looked bad, I would try to make sure that when I watched the video, none of that was happening. And by 29, I became a lifter. And not only did I become a lifter, but I made the CrossFit Games. And then I started becoming known as the strongest CrossFitter. But that wasn't really enough. I wanted to be technical. I wanted people to understand that I'd put in a lot of work and taught myself how to do this. And I started competing against lifters and winning. I did weightlifting competitions. I started to go ahead and put myself out there into a sport that I did not live. And what was so cool was lifters asking me how I got to lift so well. And that right there taught me that I was on the right path. And that's what I want to be able to do with other people. And I know that I can help you. And I know that if you're somebody that lifts, that you snatch, that you want to become a lifter. But you might not have a coach. You might not have the tools. You may not have everything that you need to become a lifter. And that's why I want to help you. And I'm going to go over a few things today to be able to try to help you understand how simple it is, that it doesn't have to be all crazy terms. You don't have to go ahead and find a coach that you pay a ton of money for, that a lot of times it is just you being able to put in the repetition and understand what you have to do to become a lifter. So here's my goal for you. I want a beginner or an intermediate lifter to become advanced, to understand what they have to do. We all think a coach can do that for us. But the truth is that you are your best coach. You are the person who witnesses every single rep. And what I learned and how I realized I really needed to be able to coach myself was when I would lift and I'd be around other people, I would finish a lift and I would immediately look around. And if I saw somebody who might be able to maybe give me a tip or who may have seen what I did, I'll look at them with this side look of, how was it? And what's crazy was, depending on what they said, dictated how I felt. If they said, wow, that was amazing, you did really well, I'd get all pumped up and I'd be super excited because I did it well. But if they said, you didn't fully extend, or, X, Y, Z, it just didn't look that great, I would all of a sudden be mad. And I realized my mood was dictated based on what somebody else thought was right or wrong. And that's when I realized that I need to be the one to make that decision. So when I started to coach myself and coach others, what I realized was I need to be able to coach myself. I need to be the one that when I finish a lift, I can diagnose what it was that I did. And when somebody else gives me feedback, that feedback doesn't dictate how I feel. What that feedback does is it's more feedback that maybe I didn't know, that I can take and I can use. And what I realized is a lot of times as we're going to lift, we don't even know what we're thinking about, let alone when we're lifting. So if you're a beginner or you're intermediate or you're anybody inside of this realm of snatching, what you need to do is create a routine. And what that means is right before you start, you need to have the exact same thing that happens from when you take your first step towards the bar to when the bar lifts up off the ground. So that's what I want you to do. And what I see a lot of times is people will have a routine for when it's light, they'll have a routine for when it's moderately heavy, and then they'll have a routine for when it's really heavy. And most of the time when it's really heavy, that routine is all dictated based on confidence. How do you feel? Is it heavy? What are you thinking about? And that's when we think. So what I want you to remove is that excess thinking. And how you do that is create a habit of approaching the bar the exact same way. For myself, what I do is I stand back about 6 feet from the bar and I will approach the bar and my left foot gets to the bar first, my right foot gets to the bar second, my left hand gets to the bar first for my hands, my right hand gets second, and then I drop my hips, I drop my head, and I tighten up my lats and I stand every single time. And what's amazing about that is it is for every lift I do. I've trained myself so that way anytime that I do a lift, from when I approach the bar to when I lift, it takes the exact same amount of time. And what that does is I don't have to think about what to do. I've trained myself to do that. The whole point of when I snatch is to take away anything that can negatively affect how I'm going to actually lift that day. So I want to remove all questions, all inconsistencies, so that way it just becomes about the lift. It doesn't become about walking up to a bar and taking 10 seconds, but then taking 4 seconds this time. It is about understanding how to approach the bar every single time so that I no longer have to think about it. And that's what I want a beginner and an intermediate lifter to be able to do right off the bat. And that is just a simple, quick first tip. So when it comes to the snatch, the details are so important. And I learned that early on. And one thing that I learned is for almost everybody that snatches and everybody that lifts is we don't pay attention to the details. So a couple things I want to talk about are hand position, foot position, and how to go ahead and make sure that we are in the right position. One thing that happens for people is when they grab the bar, a lot of times they'll put their hands on the bar, they'll lift their head up, and they'll move their hands around. We need to stop doing that. Once your hands are on the bar, they stay there. In our feet, sometimes we'll have wide feet and we'll have narrow feet. When it comes to lifting, adjusting your positions is what you need to be doing all the time. So toes being slightly out affects you a different way than when they're in. Knees being in affects you differently than being out. Having your hands too narrow affects the way that you lift the bar off the ground. Having them too wide can affect the way that you catch the bar. Now I know mobility is a big thing. And a lot of times people, they struggle with their positions and they change a lot purely for mobility. And that is a huge thing. That is something that I think every single person needs to really pay attention to. And that's why I've actually got videos of what to do the day before you snatch. Because I think what you do the day before preps you for the day of. And if it's something that really matters, it's okay to spend 15, 20 minutes to prep yourself. And when it comes to mobility and warming up, your biggest thing is the shoulders. So what I love to do in a simple way for me to warm up is I'll take a band and I actually will move the band and pulse all around my entire body. And what that does is that loosens up my shoulders. Now, if you're somebody that loves to roll with a ball or use an object, I do what's called testing and retesting. And what that means is this. We don't want to do something on both sides of the body because a lot of times we don't know if it works. Your goal is to find 2 or 3 things that work so that every single time you snatch, you do those before you lift. It just takes 1 to 2 minutes. How you do that is, let's say your lats are tight. What you would do is roll out your lat on your right side. So roll the lat out, roll the shoulder, you can roll your scap. And then what you'll do is you'll take a barbell or PVC pipe, put it overhead, and do an overhead squat. And what you'll notice is if you rotate more on this side than over here on the left side, you'll realize how much that actually positively affects your overhead mobility. So then what you do is you do it on the left side, and you should get the same thing. So we always want to test one side, do that, and see how it affects us. Because getting those elbows up is going to help with rotation. It's going to help overhead. And what I want you to realize too, when you're trying to increase mobility, it takes long holds. 2 to 3 minute holds multiple times is what you need to do to be able to increase your overall mobility. Now what you don't do is 2 to 3 minute holds and then try to lift. Those are done when you wake up or when you go to bed or you've got downtime and you're not planning on doing anything, because our goal is to open ourselves up and become more flexible. So those are a couple tips. Now, the last thing I want to share is how to find where your hands go. Now, there are many ways to do this, but a very simple one that I can share with you right now is literally take a PVC pipe and you hold it with your one arm straight up. Then you tilt it down and you grab it with your opposite arm at a 90-degree angle. Boom, put it overhead. Then what you do is you take where that bar is and you set it down and you marry it to a regular barbell, and that's where your hands go. Now that doesn't mean forever. The better you get, the more mobile you get, the stronger you get, those positions will change. So every time that you are lifting, tweak your position, 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. Move around to find out what works best for you. And that's one thing that's gonna be huge, is understanding what works best for you. And I love being able to help people to become their best coach through coaching and teaching, because I want you to be able to be alone and know exactly what you have to do to become a better lifter. Hopefully in this video, I was able to help you a little bit. I'll have another one coming in a couple days where I'm gonna be able to teach a lot more, give you some more insight into simple hacks that you can do to really improve in the snatch, because to me, it's all about keeping things simple. I want things to be simple, effective, and really be able to help you. Because that's my goal, to be able to serve, help, and hand off what it is that I've learned. And most of the things I've learned are just very simple ways to do things that bring big results. So I'd love to hear what you've thought about this video so far. I'd love any comments, questions that you have. I really appreciate that you've watched, that I can just be a part of your day. And again, I want to thank you and look forward to that next video where I'll be able to give you some more details into how to improve your snatch. So thank you again. Have a great one.